And is there an echo in the chamber, or is it just somebody? I'm getting one back for the pelters I got here. Anyway, good morning to you, and welcome to the November meeting of the Scrutiny Committee. First of all, apologies for absence. Do we have any?
Yeah. Chairman, I can confirm the meeting is quorate, there being 9 members present. Not present at the start of your meeting are Councillors Ferguson and Councillor Wiper.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Anyone get any interest? Declarations to declare? To make? Okay. Third item on the agenda. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Forgive me, Carol. Yes, please.
Thank you. Can I just confirm, and this is just a reflection of your founding decision, that if I can remind everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording will subsequently be available for public listening. So just a reminder that the meeting is recorded.
Thanks very much for that reminder. Thank you. The third item on the agenda, colleagues, is the minute of the meeting of the 13th of September 2012. It's submitted to us today for approval. It's somewhat voluminous. Anyone, any issues, or do we accept it as a correct record of the business transacted? Accepted as a correct record. Very much obliged. Thank you. Thank you. Fourth item on the agenda is the Developing the Scrutiny Performance Committee Work Programme, Handbook, and a report by the Assistant Chief Executive. Lorna, would you like to add anything to the report that's already been circulated, please?
No, I just think members have already had a chance to look at this in draft, and now it's here for formal consideration. I don't have anything further to add to that, and it's born out of the members' workshop in September and early August as well, when you all had input to this document.
Jill?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to put on record that I actually think this is a very good piece of work, and I think it should be commended as such. I think it will be very informative to other members as well, so I just want that recorded.
Delighted to hear these comments. I may say for the record that I agree entirely with them. There has been a lot of work gone into this, and perhaps it might be appropriate. Well, I'll ask if there's any other questions or any other comments or points to be made first of all before we come back to that. Any other members, wish to make any comment or raise anything? Marion.
I would just like to agree with Councillor Dykes. Really, very good.
Well, I'm delighted with that. I take it that, and I'm sure we won't be allowed, Lorna, to sort of put it in the shelf now, and that is basically our Bible, as it were, for taking forward the work of the committee. And I would like perhaps to incorporate into the agreeing, being asked to agree the Scrutiny Performance Committee Handbook, finalised or the refined version, but in addition to place on record and to have it minuted, our appreciation as a committee of the effort and work which has been put in by all concerned into making this a quality, what we all agree is a quality document and a quality handbook. Okay, thank you. And the next item, item number 5. Sorry, beg pardon, Carol.
Thank you. Just a completeness then of the decision, you're commending this handbook then as an excellent piece of work, and also commending the effort of the staff who've worked with members to produce the handbook. You're agreeing the handbook. Can I just confirm what members understand by the decision to agree the handbook?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is our template for the way forward.
So in effect, you're sorry, it's just for transparency. I think sometimes when people see the decisions of the committee and we have to action them, we've got to be very clear about what action has to follow. So in effect, you are adopting this as the operating method for the committee.
Exactly so. And that is the operating method. And, I think, I'm sure, I would hope colleagues would agree with me, that it will be subject to ongoing refinement should circumstances so dictate. Ian.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I just think as a consequence, we had 2 or 3 seminars getting this together, and as a consequence of that, there's not as much debate here today as what there would have been normally. And that's just because, I mean, I think that was the right way to do it, is to actually have a lot of informal debate behind the scenes, so to speak. But certainly when it's come to the public, it maybe isn't apparent today just how much work's went into this and how much involvement we've actually had. But that's probably a consequence of why Carol's come up with that absolute pertinent question. But it's same as everybody else, fully support this. Excellent document, to say the least. And I agree with the statements that you've just put forward.
Can also place on record my appreciation of the involvement and the input from fellow members of this committee. It's much appreciated. Could I just ask for the record, Lorna, I take it this has been circulated to all 47 members of the authority? It will be.
Yes, it has, and it will be now, and it will be available on the members' websites and share.
Thanks very much indeed. Item number 5, developing the Scrutiny and Performance Committee work programme reviews report. Again, Lorna, by yourself, been circulated. Anything further to add?
No, simply to say this reflects the discussion at the workshop, and it's now for members' formal consideration of the debate at that workshop, and there are a set of recommendations here to take members through their consideration of each step of that, whether to affirm some of their earlier considerations or to change those based on the information that's been summarised in the report.
Okay. First of all, any comments to make on this, colleagues? Any issues to raise? Ian, and then Joel.
It isn't so much an issue, but I think just for my own sake, and recommendation 2.2 picked up, should it read when it says the reviews in paragraph 4.5.3, should it be a point 1 on the end of that? It should have, just for...
Even Homer nods.
Just to say that I'm pleased that people have actually put forward suggestions, and I hope that once other members see some of the suggestions that are on here, that they'll feel free to come forward with other items that they may feel that the scrutiny panel should have a look at. And I mean, it's good that throughout the year that we can actually accept other things that we think it might be of an urgent nature that the scrutiny committee need to review.
Leader?
Chair, there was one that came up, was it last week at PHE, not the last meeting, but the one before, with regard to external funding bids. Across the council, it may be worthwhile having a look to see if we're actually maximising our opportunities to get funding bids through our filling out the forms, and just to see if there's something that if there's trend that we don't get everyone, but we get every second one, could we make it 2 out of 3 that we get? See if there's a way we could improve the process in that.
In other words, if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is look at ways in which we enhance our performance in drawing down external funding on the part of this authority. Right, okay. Jill, you want to comment on that?
It was really just on that. I mean, I'm not suggesting that's not a good idea, but we have a procedure that we need to follow now. So, I mean, obviously it would just be a case of filling in a form and submitting it, I'm presuming, and then there would be a decision made on that.
Can I say that I am certainly not work shy. However, I think there's just a slight concern that, we start what I would say is perhaps taking on maybe more than we can, biting off more than we can chew in the first instance. We've got, as far as I'm concerned, a good raft of topics here that we can really sort of get to work on, take forward, and I'm sure it will deliver quality outputs in these. And I think it's the old cliche, learn to crawl before you walk, before you run sort of thing, and that's like an awful lot of old sayings, there's a lot of wisdom in it, and I would like, as I say, I would like to see us getting, to the stage as quickly as we can. And I think perhaps maybe one of the ways of assisting that is to focus on what essentially we've already agreed on our discussions, and particularly at the last workshop, which was a superb event in my opinion. And we focus on that and stick to these at the moment. But again, as always, I'd be interested to hear any comments from anyone else. Richard.
I think we've got enough material to get the ball rolling, but I think we need to reach the whole of the council. I think 90% of the ideas came from one councillor, and we need to find ways of reaching the rest of the council. Perhaps when we are putting out the Scrutiny Performance Handbook, we can also put a template out with that people can fill in.
Thank you, that's helpful. Right, well, Ian, yes?
Thanks very much for your indulgence, Chair. Just see on 4.5.3.1, the third bullet point is the one that Councillor Dykes brought up in regard to the local development plan. It refers to the action plan there as well, and I mentioned it at a seminar regarding KPIs. Would it be possible to put KPIs in so we can monitor on an annual basis and see how it's performing? Maybe that's for the next one. Maybe it'll be put in the action plan as it comes forward. But I just wonder, how do we look at that? And I know I've quizzed a wee bit in the background as well, but just for absolute clarity, and the Scrutiny and Performance Committee, how do we, is it possible to put KPIs in there?
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Ian.
Yeah,
Liz?
the discussion that we'd had with colleagues about that idea was that the action plan will indeed have detailed performance information in it, and they welcomed the opportunity that once the action plan had been implemented, that this group would then look to see how effective that had been. So yes, there will be performance information in it, and then your role at the end of it will be to scrutinise whether or not that action plan had delivered all that was hoped.
Satisfied? Aye. I think it's absolutely imperative that we ensure that there are the relevant KPIs inserted in all of these exercises. That's what they're all about, key performance indicators. If you don't have them defined and identified, you can't measure your performance against them. Okay, unless anyone has any other comments, can we adopt the recommendations which are set out there with the minor amendment to 2.2, and that would make it 4.5.1. And apart from that, as I say, adopt what else is there, what the rest of being there. Okay?
Arising out of that one, performance information of Council's priorities and commitments. I noticed in our free broadcast magazine we sent out, one of the things there was where we didn't meet our target, and that was the percentage of schools receiving positive inspection reports, where the target was 81% and we received 33%. Now, quite frankly, that is not the fault of an individual teacher, an individual school. It's a systemic failure at the centre. Now, I don't know whether this has been reported to the Education Committee or not. Obviously, they should have the first bite of the cherry, but it's maybe something that we as the Scrutiny Committee want to look at, because this is quite shocking. The Director should really be getting on top of this.
Can I say, first of all, I'm delighted to allow you to raise that, and that's not meant to be patronising to you. I'm gratified that we're coming council publications and sort of, with our scrutiny and our performance management glasses on. And I think the points you've made are very well made. I think I would agree with you in face value. It would appear, in fact, to be something of a systemic failure to achieve that target. Can we perhaps discuss how best we can take this forward? Because I'm not minded, as it were, in fact, not prepared, you having raised it, to allow it to drift off into the ether. Liz?
Yep. The end-of-year reports were reported to each of the service committees earlier in the year, but there's certainly been an issue for the schools' results just because of the way the academic year falls. So you're quite right that the service committee looks at the performance. There will be an exception report to explain why that has been. My understanding, I think there is something about the way in which the assessment was made by the national body. That has changed, which has skewed the results somewhat, but that explanation in detail would be given to the Education Committee. The intention is at the end of the year that you will receive the sort of, if you like, the overview of the Council's performance throughout the year. So you'll have an opportunity to scrutinise that, and we can certainly tell you what scrutiny activity the service committees have undertaken as they've looked at their results. And certainly some of that will come up in your review, which is asking, you'll be looking at how the service committees are undertaking their role, so that we can certainly make sure as part of that review that specific issue.
Want to come back, Tom? And then
yeah, I mean, my worry is that this is now out in the public domain. Every household got a copy of this, and obviously folk are asking questions about it. And if it hasn't been to the committee before it went public, there certainly is wacky information there for elected members if the public question them. That's all you can put into it as a systemic failure. And it's a bit worrying, because what would appear to be happening is that schools have been cut loose to do their own thing without any direction from the centre in terms of curriculum development, etc., etc. And that is a rather worrying trend. If every secondary and primary school out there doing whatever they want to do without being properly backed up by the directorate, then I'm really concerned. I think the director's got to take a shake to himself, quite frankly.
Jill, Richard and Colin.
Well, actually, I think Liz answered the question that I was going to ask about what the process would be to bring it back to this committee, but obviously it's got to go to education first.
Richard?
Yeah, it's something which the committee have had a report on, and there was forensic questioning of it, and we're getting a report back on it. So if you could maybe check up when that report will be going back to education, that would be a good thing.
I was about to ask that. I think, that the timescale, bearing in mind what's already been said, the timescale, and that is of paramount importance. Okay, Colin?
Richard's more or less answered what I was going to ask, but it was just to say that it did come up at Education Committee, and it was, as Liz said, something to do with the way the reporting was being done, skewing the figures. But also to add that this has been raised at 3 community councils that I've attended in the last week or so. It is quite shocking to see that figure as low as that. Yeah.
I think that's that no one would quarrel with the points which have been raised today, but I'm not quite understanding why a statement like that should be issued, should be incorporated into broadcast, publicised the length and breadth of the region, and there was no sort of explanatory. I mean, what we've heard this morning from Liz that there are, I won't say extenuating circumstances, but there are reasons as to why perhaps, and they're going to have to be good reasons, I would think, to satisfy us as to why that figure is so low. But it would have been particularly helpful, in fact, to have addressed that before. In fact, it was punted out, for want of a better term, with every household in Dumfries and Galloway. Jill, you wanted to come in.
Well, actually, it was on that same point. We've alarmed a large number of people by putting that type of information in the broadcast booklet that's gone out across the whole region. And if there was an explanation that had been brought up at Education Committee, if you are putting that type of thing on the broadcast booklet, then at least there needs to be the explanation there if that is the correct information. Otherwise, but actually at this point in time, I personally have no idea as to why it was set so low, what if anything was causing the different way that they were actually inspected or the results were provided, etc., etc. So I think it is very alarming that we're sending information like that out, and members of the Education Committee are saying, well, we did scrutinise it at Education Committee and we're waiting for a further report. Either wait till you get the further report, put all the correct information out in the broadcast booklet, or make sure there's an explanation there.
Well, I would agree entirely with that, because I think at the end of the day, it calls into question, I'm not sort of trying to set in place the snowball effect here, but it calls into question, the sort of the quality of the broadcast publication, because at the end, I'm not suggesting for one moment that you massage the information that you put in the public domain and you spin it, to create the best impression. But putting that in, when the decision was taken to put that in, to me, it should have been axiomatic to ensure, in fact, that there was an explanation put in as to why this was the case, and to flag up just exactly why, at the end of the day, or what was going to be done, to improve the situation. Tom.
If you actually read the article, it's headed School Inspections, tells you what Education Scotland do and what they're looking for when they inspect schools, development of children, young people's skills and understanding, literacy, numeracy, health and well-being, etc., etc., etc. And it explains what the inspection criteria are. Then you get the traffic light saying that our target was 81% and we've got 33%. Doesn't tell you why. And the only thing you can assume, the only thing I've told people is, if the target's 81 and it's 75, then you can point to one school, you can point to maybe a couple of teachers. When it's at that level, it's systemic, it's the directorate, it's not the individual schools. It means they're not getting support for the centre. That's what it boils down to. But we need that to be verified. But when you put stuff out like this in the public domain, then I'll draw my conclusions and so will other members of the public. That's the problem.
Explain about the model for broadcast is that for each of the priority areas, there's an example of where we've met or exceeded the target, There's an example of where we haven't met the target, and there's an example of a project that we're doing to improve. And that model, if you like, giving a balanced view about the council's performance was certainly one of the strong messages when we did public consultation a couple of years ago, that what they didn't want was us telling them everything that we've done well and not saying anything about the things that we haven't done well. So I think what should have happened for every one of the traffic lights that where we haven't met our target, there should be indeed an explanation alongside it, drawn from the exception reports that you get to explain why the performance, why we didn't meet the performance, and make a direct link between the performance and the explanation. I think from what you're saying, that, for example, in the planning one, where you'll recall from our last discussion, last meeting, that we didn't meet the target, but there were reasons why, and that has been included in broadcast. I think from what you're saying is that there isn't that direct link between the article and the performance to explain that. So perhaps it's just there should have been more detail about linking it into why our performance was lower. But we can certainly make sure that information is given to members so that if you are getting questions at community councils, that you've got that detail to assist you.
Colin?
Thank you, Chair. This was one of the reasons why I suggested we look at KPIs, because if it's a way of recording the information, of reporting the information changes radically, then it's going to throw your KPI or your indicator out. And if there's not a reason behind it, you can't judge from one year to another how the performance is actually changing.
Laughing at an old man, an old technophobe. Shame on you. Right, anyway, but let's get deflected from this, because this is extremely important indeed. Did you want to add anything else to? No. Any other comments on it? The question I would put, Liz, is that perhaps how best do you feel? I mean, I think the committee are unanimous this morning on this point. And how best in the circumstances do you feel we'll get that message across, not only to the Education Committee in relation to this specific issue, but to all committees, or to those that are tasked with assembling broadcast and putting it out. As I've said, and I think you've reinforced it, we're talking about a warts and all assessment, for want of a better term. And at the end of the day, most importantly of all, people need to be reassured as to the fact that we're addressing it, and more importantly, how we propose to address it when that information is available. So if we could get that out into the wider committee domain of the council, it would be worthwhile. Okay, Carol, that would asking for your guidance. We would treat that issue as an extra item of business, I would suggest, rather than sort of trying. Tom indicated that, arising from item 5, but rather than including it in item 5, I would propose that we treat it as a separate item of business, and that we take it on that basis. Would you have any advice to offer or guidance to offer in that regard?
No, Chairman. I think obviously, as Chairman of the committee, you have powers to allow for urgent items of business to be entered into the meeting. The reasons are obviously there needs to be in the council's public performance reporting completeness, so we can arrange then for the record of the debate, the issue, why it was raised, and the recommendations that come from this committee. Okay.
Anyone, any other issues or comments? I'm not trawling for business. I'm not a believer in prolonging meetings for the sake of it. We did all the work in relation to this particular agenda, and sort of various workshops and prior events, and to that extent, it's worthwhile bringing it here today, to sign it off and approve it. So, if there are no further items of urgency that anyone particularly has a burning desire to raise, I would thank you all for your attendance and your input, and close the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, just so that, again, it's just for completeness of the decision, Can I ask you in respect of 2.5, which is you were asked to consider the initial prioritisation of the agreed reviews and timescales. Can I just confirm the decision then in respect of those considerations are that you are accepting the prioritisation?
Yes.
Thank you.